we're sending out the schedule. And I think it
Welcome everybody back to the last Connect show of the DC Leadership Conference. I'm Cindy Hollis and what is my title? Manager of Membership Engagement. And I'm here with
Colby Garrison, Membership Services Administrative Assistant.
And we have been having really just an amazing time doing these shows. So thanks for bearing with us. And our last two guests of this leadership conference for these Connect shows have to do with recognizing deserving people in our community, either members of our community, people who are blind or visually impaired, or people who just touch the blindness community. And so let's kick it off with Katie and from the Board of Publications. And Katie Frederick, why don't you talk to us about the awards that the BOP offers?
Sure, Cindy. Well, good afternoon. And you saved the best for last, right? With this connection
Absolutely,
show.
yeah.
No, we've had a lot of good guests. I've really enjoyed the connection shows and just
Thank you.
learning more about, hearing all about the programs. So within the Board of Publications, we have 3 different awards that focus on media and writing because, well, that's kind of our board's purview. So the 3 awards that we have in these categories are the Ned E Freeman Award, and that award recognizes articles that are published in the ACB Braille Forum, as well as articles that have been published in state or special interest affiliate newsletters. So you can submit those articles to Sharon Lovering. The deadline for all of the awards is April 1st. And again, for the Ned E Freeman, if your article wins, you not only get a beautiful plaque that is labeled in print and Braille, but you receive a $100 cash prize. And that sounds pretty cool to me. So be sure to send those submissions in. And the eligible time frame for articles is from April of 2021 to March of 2021. So quite a range there. So it's an opportunity for you to recognize great writers within ACB at the national or state level. The next award that we offer is the Hollis Liggett Braille Free Press Award, and this recognizes the affiliate newsletters that are produced. And we know a lot of you produce great publications within your affiliate, and we want to award and recognize those. So this award does come with some criteria for submission, such as including some formats of the publication and some other things, which you can read about in the January issue of the ACB Braille Forum. But don't let that overwhelm you or discourage you, because it really is quite simple. Just follow the steps and submit those nominations. And again, that deadline is April 1st. And last but not least, we have the Vernon Henley Media Award. And this award is given to what I think is, all of the awards are great, but this one is really cool to me because it recognizes media, any medium that portrays the capabilities of people who are blind or low vision in a positive light. And I know that we would all love to see more of that and want to recognize those in the media that do this. So this award really, again, covers any medium, anything from newspapers to magazines to radio to television. If it's a medium, it's probably covered by this award. And so again, look at the January issue of the Braille Forum for that criteria and how to submit as well. Again, all of these submissions go to the marvelous Braille Forum editor, Sharon Lovering, in the ACB National Office. Her email is slovering@acb.org. And we welcome your submissions. The deadline is April 1st. And one more note before I turn it back to you, Cindy. Just want to mention that, I know I mentioned this in my report the other day, but if you missed it, want to mention here that we are looking to standardize the large print guidelines for ACB. The Council of Citizens with Low Vision International, or CCLVI, approached us in January and said, hey, we'd like to maybe look at adopting some large print guidelines. It's been about 5 years since ACB has done anything in this space. And so the March issue of the Braille Forum contains an article that is written in the proposed large print standard, and we welcome your feedback about that. It's in the hard copy issue. You can best read it there, hold it in your hand, and see how it reads for you. And you can send that feedback to Sharon Lovering as well. And we also have our Voices blog, of course, which I know has been talked about over the weekend, but a great way to share your thoughts, your voice, We've had several posts on the awesome community that is celebrating its 2nd birthday this week on Thursday, so that's exciting. So feel free to submit an entry to voices@acb.org. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Cindy.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for covering those extras, and just really excited to remind people of this great opportunity to recognize industry and also those that have written really good articles on issues that, of interest to those who are reading them, especially those of us who are blind or visually impaired. So thanks for all you do, Katie.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. And just for clarification, the Hollis Liggett Award, not named after me. Anyway.
Might have been a little bit before your time, Cindy.
Anyway. All right. Next we have Carrie Muth from Oregon. And Carrie, Connie has been here before, and now you are going to talk to us as co-chair of the awards committee. And this is a great opportunity to really talk about how we can recognize people in our own sphere, right? People that we know and observe on a daily basis, and give them some of that recognition that we know they deserve. And it's not going to happen unless people write those nomination letters. So talk to us about the awards program.
Yeah, so you're so right, Cindy. We do need letters of recommendation, and nominations are due April 1st. And at the end here, I'll give a couple email addresses for those. And criteria for these awards was out in the January Braille Forum. You can find it on the website, all that kind of stuff. But first, I wanted to tell people, why am I on this committee, right? And so crazy me, last year's convention, during the time I thought, hey, maybe I should get more involved nationally. And then I called Dan. Well, that was kind of nuts. You call Dan, ask him for more work, he'll pile it on, right?
Because why not?
Yeah. And then he told me, we had a nice conversation about different committees. I was like, oh, I'm interested in this one and this one. He goes, we really need you on awards. And I'm like, I know nothing about awards. But I got to tell you guys, this has been a lot of fun. Connie is great to work with, and Janet Dickelman, and actually our whole awards team. And I'll go through those names in a minute, but it is an awesome experience. So I'd really like to encourage anybody out there, if you've thought about stepping up and serving on a committee, do it. You're going to meet some great people, and, just expand your own knowledge and your own circle. So I'm not going to go through each of these because, oh my gosh, I read slow. But there's a Robert S. Gray Award, the Durwood K. McDaniel Ambassador Award, the George Cart Award, James Olson Distinguished Service Award, Marjoram B. Distinguished Service Award. And I know Connie talked some about that one for volunteering. One I want to, go ahead, Cindy.
I was just going to say, it's Marjoram, there's an initial, I think it's, now I can't remember, but Beeman. Beeman Volunteer. I think that's a volunteer recognition award. And then James R. Olson is the Distinguished
You're
Service.
Correct.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
My computer talks so fast sometimes I can't keep up.
I got it.
So the other award we do is the Affiliate Outreach Award, that is usually recommended by an affiliate president, recognizing a local chapter for a service project, essentially. And, I got to tell you, 2 years ago, so I've never been to an in-person national convention, and I'm so looking forward to Omaha.
I bet you are.
And so the 2020 convention was the first one, and I was listening to the awards, and they came up, and I think this award was given to a chapter or affiliate that did a CCTV project, getting them in the hands of people. And this really spoke to me because several years ago in my local chapter, we did this same thing, and we raised money, and we got CCTVs and put them in assisted living centers. And this thing has grown, and we've been donated CCTVs. And, right now there's too many sitting in storage with COVID. It's been hard to get them out into places, but even one that's 10, 15 years old that, people think, oh, that's not the best. It doesn't do all these fancy things. You know what? It still can let somebody read their mail or, whatever they need to do. So, that was just really exciting when I saw that. And, just some of these other award winners, hearing their stories has been great. And it's been a lot of fun working with Katie too, because she's been participating in the different things. If you guys haven't heard, we were on Tuesday Topics, and that was fun. I actually took the lead on that one, and that was a lot of fun because Paul did a lot of stuff and had Kim Charlson, and I think Chris Gray was, I forget who else. But they had a lot of history of ACB history and the history of the awards and all this great information. So I learned so much doing that. At first you think, oh my gosh, a 2-hour time slot. But it was great. And there was a visibilities that Janet Dickelman took the lead on. And we had guests for all of these previous award winners that were our guests and were interviewed and asked questions of. So that was really cool. And Connie did one with Sunday Edition, which was really interesting as well. And they were all different, all great fun and very informational. And we have a community call coming up on the 24th, which Katie's going to be joining us with too, that we'll have some other, previous winners. So I really encourage everybody to come unless you're busy with the birthday bash.
What time is it going to be?
9 Eastern.
Is that the same time as the birthday bash?
I don't know.
Birthday bash is this week.
Okay, it's the following week. Okay, good.
Oh, okay, so that's good. Okay, so
well, if I can be there, I will be.
Okay, cool. Because we got I forget who we have lined up, but it should be fun, and it'll be a great chance if you have questions, if you're working through nominating somebody. And that's one thing I really want to do is when you write your letters, our committee can only make the decisions who gets these awards based on what's in the letter. So really make sure the letter's a good letter. If you need to have friends help you or other, ACB members, whatever, but, really do a great job.
Is there a word limit count on the letter submissions? Or
I have no clue. I don't think so.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right.
And I want to say that I've had we've been working with a great committee, Connie and myself. And, Janet has been a great wealth because this is Connie's first year on the committee too.
Yep.
So
we're gonna need to wind it down because we have like a little over a minute.
Okay.
But thank you, Carrie, so much. Thank you to Katie. And before we get out of here, I want to give a plug to our community. So many people have been involved in our community. And Colby, why don't you go through how people can get themselves on our daily schedule or call in to hear it?
Sure. So if you want to join and get the daily schedule via email, you can send an email to community@acb.org. Let us know you'd like to receive the daily schedule. We'll get you signed up. It's that easy, and you'll get the daily schedule in your inbox. If you know somebody who does not have access to email, they can still participate and hear our schedule via the phone system. So call 1-800-424-8666, and you can listen to the schedule by following the prompts.
And we hold somewhere between 90 and 100 events every single week. We started March 17th of 2020, going strong. We will have a celebration this Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. We hope you'll join us. It is a place where you can expect and receive that is safe, respectful, and welcoming. Thank you, ACB, for giving Colby and I the opportunity to do these Connect shows, and for everybody who participated. We appreciate you, and congratulations to everybody involved in the DC Leadership Conference. Enjoy the rest of it. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
ACB, below each letter, dots representing the letter in Braille. American Council of the Blind, together for a bright future. ACB Executive Director Eric Bridges and Advisory Board Member Charles Cooper. Eric Bridges, Executive Director.
Welcome back. Eric Bridges with ACB, and very pleased to be joined by Charles Cooper, ACB's newest advisory board member. Welcome, Charles.
Thanks very much, Eric. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So, Charles, as with the other advisory board members, interested in having the audience get to know you a little bit better. Can you share with folks what you do, your day-to-day 9-to-5 role?
Charles Cooper, Managing Director, SignalGroup.
Absolutely. I work at a firm in DC called the SignalGroup, which is a lobbying and communications firm. I lead the lobbying practice of the firm, and we represent clients across industry, nonprofits, and trade associations on most of the work dealing with Congress and the administration. So really trying to advance mostly policy and funding initiatives that they are focused on.
Outstanding. And it's been wonderful to have your participation in the last few years at our legislative seminar. Thanks for volunteering your time to be with us.
It's been great.
Excellent. Why don't you tell us a little bit about sort of the circumstances that brought you to ACB and the advisory board?
Absolutely. Well, I've had the great privilege of, in the past, working with both Tony and Clark of the ACB team in other capacities, and have had a great time getting to know them and better understanding really the mission and the impact that ACB has made. And I've really appreciated the opportunity, frankly, to join a really impressive team of leaders, staff, and advisory board members in thinking through sort of the future direction of ACB. And I've really enjoyed it, and it's been a great opportunity. And I certainly appreciate the connections made a long time ago with Tony and Clark to get here.
Outstanding. Yeah. And I believe that you joined us, in June of last year? Something
That's
like
right.
that?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So since you joined and having had previous relationships with Tony Stevens and Clark Rockfall, can you tell us a little bit about what you've been helping the organization with, the leadership and staff with since you came aboard?
Yeah, my background is largely in the government affairs space, and it's also to some degree in the partnership development space. And ACB has a really interesting and forward-looking agenda as it relates to policy on the Hill and the administration. So in some degree, I've been working with the ACB team, thinking through what their policy looks like, what their advocacy strategies look like, and sort of where to go from here. And of course, there's a lot of pros on that team. So I'm partially sitting back and applauding and partially helping think through some new ideas. But I'm also working with Tony Stevens on thinking about some new partnerships, some partner organizations that could align with the work that ACB is doing and help advance the mission more broadly.
Outstanding. And I hear that some of that has to do with our Get Up and Get Moving campaign, right?
It does. The Get Up and Get Moving campaign is something that's really interesting to me because I do a lot of work in the outdoor recreation space and really have become a believer in not only the impact of recreation, but generally the impacts of the outdoors on mental and physical health. And the Get Up and Get Moving campaign certainly is aligned with that. And I think there's so much to be done in this space. And especially as we look at the impact that COVID has had. And people are really starting in some ways to rediscover recreation, rediscover the outdoors, not only for physical health and mental well-being, but also just to connect with people. And it's been really interesting to see. It's been an enormous resurgence of people that are leveraging outdoor recreation specifically. And while I know that's not the entire focus of the campaign, certainly there's a component there. And so I've been really excited to learn about it and to think through some potential opportunities there. And it's a really, really interesting opportunity, I think, for ACB, your members, and certainly your partners.
I totally agree. It's been good to sort of, I think at times be forced to rediscover the outdoors over the last couple of years, but no matter how you got there, as long as you're getting outside and moving around, life seems to be better. Yeah.
I would just say, Eric, really quick, it's such an important mission. And I think there's so much behind it that can really impact individuals, but also as a society. This is where we're moving towards. We're moving towards thinking more, frankly, about our health and our well-being and our time together, and sort of long-term implications of the pandemic. And I think that the Get Up and Get Moving campaign is a really, really important step in the right direction to get people to really value and prioritize activity and recreation, and hopefully to some degree outdoor recreation. But I just really appreciate the work that's been put into that, and really the success of it is really impressive.
Awesome. Well, hey, we appreciate you and your efforts on the advisory board, and it's been great getting to know you a little better over the last year, and look forward to your continued work with ACB. Charles, thanks so much.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate it. I appreciate the partnership and the opportunity, and I really look forward to sitting down and getting to work on more initiatives down the road. Thank you.
Sounds great. Take care.
A logo, ACB in print and Braille, American Council of the Blind, together for a bright future.
Thank you, Charles, for your interview.
Yes.
And go ahead.
Oh, you got it, Swatha.
All right. And this session is going to just talk more with Charles about the political outlook for 2022 and beyond. Yeah, so first off, Charles, so tell us a little about the priorities with Congress and future for midterms and all that.
Great. Thank you so much. And thanks really to the entire ACB team for not only putting on such a wonderful conference, but also really helping advance key issues that policymakers are focused on. I really appreciate it, and I always really value my time with ACB and these conferences. So thank you very much for the invitation to be here today, and I really hope that we can have a good dynamic discussion going forward. So I thought I would walk through really sort of 4 issues, and then maybe have some questions and answers if that works for everybody. The first will be an overview of the 2022 election and what might happen, and some key indicators to continue to monitor. Secondly, I'd pivot to discuss the policy agenda that we should expect for the rest of the year. Third is to discuss a little bit about some tips and advice on being a really strong advocate, and then move into some questions and answers, hopefully. I should start by just giving a little bit of background on myself. I worked on Capitol Hill for about 11 years, a couple years in the Senate and the rest in the House, and then moved into a public affairs firm where I lead the government relations side of the company. And I've been both a consumer and a consumer of lobbying, and a producer of lobbying, I guess to say. And so I really appreciate and understand the work that you all are doing, not only with your policymakers in DC, but hopefully with folks back home as well. And I know we're gonna get into that. But first, let me talk about what so many are sort of currently discussing, which is the 2022 election. It may surprise some of us to know that the 2022 election is only 238 days away. In fact, the 2024 election is 966 days away for anybody that's counting. But 238 days away is not a lot of time. I mean, when you think about out of that 238 days, a fraction of those, Congress is in session. And right around this time, you start seeing elections really gear up and hire their staff. And they're obviously in full fundraising mode. In fact, some elections have already had their primaries. So things are really moving in the 22 election year, even though, you know, maybe the onslaught of advertising hasn't started yet. It certainly will very soon. And we're going to start hearing a lot more about what's happening locally on the campaign trail. There's a handful of things that I would call sort of indicators on where this election is going to go. The first is retirements. Right around now and for the couple months preceding, when there's a big election on the horizon, you start seeing a number of retirements, especially in the House side, because members of Congress start observing the realities of the political landscape and start wondering, do I want to hang around if I'm not in the majority? And do I want to go through another difficult campaign cycle? So I always look to retirements as one key indicator early on as to where things are going. And right now in the House, there are 30 Democratic retirements and 18 Republican retirements. That's pretty significant. If you think of 30 Democratic retirements and 18 Republicans, just from retirements alone, there will be 48 new members next year. And in the Senate, there's 1 Democrat retiring and 6 Republicans retiring. So if you are in the House and you're in the Democratic caucus and you're seeing, you know, a good chunk of your colleagues retiring, there's some immediate concern about what the politics on the ground are what politics are emerging on the ground. So retirements are one indicator. The other is how many seats are up for re-election and how many are at risk. And in the House, all seats are up for re-election. So that's not really a core standard in the House, but there's a good number at risk. And again, Democrats share the majority of that at-risk portion of congressional seats. In the Senate, there are 34 seats up for the 2022 election, and 14 are Democratic and 20 are Republican. And so when observing the 2022 election by numbers alone, obviously Republicans have more to defend in the Senate, and Democrats have more to defend in the House in terms of what's at risk. That being said, we're not necessarily seeing that in trends. Republicans are well positioned in the House, and it's right now sort of going back and forth between Democrats and Republicans in the Senate. So we'll have to pay a little bit more closer attention on that one. So again, retirements, what seats are up for election, also important. And then the third is historical data. And I am a big believer in studying sort of the data behind these elections. And the data tells an interesting story. In fact, since President Truman's midterm election in 1946, only 5 midterm elections have gained seats in either chamber for the president's party. Kennedy gained 3 seats in 62, Nixon gained 2 seats in 1970, Reagan gained 1 seat in 1982, Bush gained 8 seats in the House and 2 seats in the Senate, and Trump gained 2 seats in the Senate. All others lost. In fact, all but President Bush in 2002 lost seats in the House while gaining seats in the Senate. And the average of that loss was pretty significant. When you look at those numbers in more recent history, and I'm not going to bore everybody with just constant data, but just give me 1 more minute here. When you look at those numbers in more recent history, the trends are even more stark for the president's party. Bill Clinton lost 52 House seats and 2 Senate seats. As I mentioned, Bush was a bit of an anomaly and won in both chambers. Obama lost 63 seats in the House and 6 seats in the Senate. And Trump lost 40 seats in the House and won 2 seats in the Senate. Since that President Clinton midterm election, there's been an average loss of 44 seats in the House and 2 seats in the Senate for the president's party. So all that is to say, when looking at historical data, the historical data does not favor Democrats either. And of course, these are pretty odd political times, and voters could prove historical trends wrong, as they did in President Bush's election, where he won in both the House and Senate. But Democrats certainly face an uphill battle against current political trends if you're just looking at history. There's a number of issues that are going to impact the election, and I sort of highlight 6, but there's probably more than that. One, and it's always here, is the economy. Things like gas prices, inflation, jobs, GDP. The economy is always the top issue of how people vote, and I don't anticipate that will be any different. And I also believe, just personally, that people vote the economy on the day that they vote, not what it was 5 months ago, or 4 months ago, or a year ago. They vote how the economy is impacting them when they vote, however they vote. And so the economy is one of those that's sort of a late-breaking issue. Second is national security. And obviously, the emerging situation in Ukraine is concerning. And, voters will consider that. Third in my thought process is the ability for both sides to sell what I would call policy wins. And that could be passing something, it could be stopping something, but the ability for them to highlight policy wins on the campaign trail. For Democrats, that will certainly be how they sell the infrastructure package as a core win. And that's something that they are certainly out there talking about. Fourth is healthcare, also a constant issue on the campaign trail. Fifth is COVID, even now, sort of what the response to COVID was, what the impact of COVID was, et cetera. And sixth, sort of an emerging issue, is energy independence. And I think there's going to be a lot of discussion around energy independence. I would also say that, redistricting is going to play a role. So it's not just about seats that are up, and it's not just about who's most vulnerable, but a lot of these districts are being shifted around. Some seats are being taken away, some are being added. A lot of those are sort of tied up in the process right now, but redistricting will play a role, and it will certainly provide an opportunity for both parties to shift a little bit and play in some new territory. Again, it's still a long way away to the 2022 election, and we will continue to monitor how that progresses. I think we are probably going to experience some big changes in the House of Representatives. If there is a shift in the majority, just by the way that the House works, everything changes. So all the committees will be run differently. Who determines what's on the floor, how long it's on the floor, what amendments will be passed, will be put in the hands of different people, and the entire agenda will shift. In the Senate, of course, if there was a change in majority, it would shift as well, but to a lesser extent, because they still require 60 votes to pass most things. And so therefore, the Senate would still require strong bipartisan support to move most issues. The House would not. And so it'd be a pretty significant change if those historical trends prove accurate. And I would also say that for the remainder of the time between now and the election, there's a good amount of opportunity for policy wins and losses. And I think I would consider some of that as not necessarily things that reach the president's desk, but also policies that are used for messaging. And I would assume that there will be plenty of that between now and the election. So let me shift to talk a little bit about that policy agenda and what we can expect there. I think there's a handful of issues that will certainly be at the top of this agenda. We continue to focus on COVID. And in fact, as early as this week, there will be an additional spending package that passes that will help address COVID issues. Secondly, for the rest of this month and into next month, the Supreme Court nomination will take a lot of time and focus in the Senate. So we can expect sort of both the vetting process, which is happening now, and the hearing process, which is expected to start later in the month. We can expect a lot of attention will shift to the Supreme Court nomination. I think it goes without saying, just looking at previous ones, this actually does take a lot of time. And while the Senate does move on with business, I think it will be at a little bit of a slower pace when the Supreme Court nominee is moving through the process. There's also a China competition bill that has passed the House and passed the Senate, and sort of behind the scenes they're negotiating it. But this is probably the biggest bipartisan win opportunity left for the year until the election. And so there's a number of policymakers on both sides of the aisle that have really prioritized this and are moving forward. Given sort of the geopolitical landscape right now, I think it probably adds some pressure to pass this bill. But this is, part supply chain, part domestic manufacturing, and part international relations in a sense. And I think both sides are really coming together on this. So that is one that could move. Additionally, the implementation of the bipartisan infrastructure bill is something that the administration certainly is taking a lot of time to address. And we are experiencing those implementation dates throughout this year and into next year. And as you may know, that bipartisan infrastructure bill was funded over 5 years. So this is not a near-term bill only, but it's something that getting it moving, if you will take some time. Ukraine response is also a top tier issue, and it's unclear how that will move forward. But they did just pass a spending package that would assist the Department of Defense in some things. And I think Congress is very focused on Ukraine. So as that situation evolves, I think Congress will get more involved. Also, there's a lot of trade and tariff issues related to products that are being imported from China that are scheduled to be considered by the U.S. Trade Representative's Office. And that is a really big issue for business and manufacturers. So something that I just list because it will take a lot of attention. The National Defense Authorization Act and what I think will become an end of year post-election package is also probably the biggest opportunity for organizations to sort of load up a piece of legislation or two that move towards the end of the year. After the election, when there is no or not as much political vulnerability and political risk out there, people tend to come together and pass an end of year package. And unclear what would be in that. That will be funding, policy, a combination of both. But that will happen, and sometimes that gets aligned with the Defense Authorization Act, which has to happen before the end of the year. So that is a big opportunity. Just three more things I wanted to mention in this regard. The president's budget is being delivered to Congress at some point next week, we think around the 23rd. And the president's budget is his blueprint on where his priorities will be for the next year. It's never really passed per se. It's just a blueprint. Congress ultimately decides where to spend the money. But it will be an important indication of where the White House is going to prioritize their efforts and their policy positions for the rest of the year. Traditionally, after that budget, the appropriations committees in the House get together and start building these spending packages. And I think because of the election year, that's probably not going to happen. So they just passed a big appropriations bill. I think the next appropriations bill will have to wait a while. And then lastly, are messaging bills. These are bills that are likely not going to be signed into law, probably in some indication don't have any intention of being signed into law, but are really used to provide solid messaging for policymakers to campaign on. And that is a very normal thing before an election. And I think there will be a good amount of that. So before we turn it over to questions, I'm just going to quickly talk about being a really good advocate. And I know from my experience with ACB, there are great advocates, and the work that is being done is just awesome. But a few things that I always want to tell folks. First and foremost is advocacy should really be an ongoing discussion and not just a one and done. You know, one meeting a year because the conference is around, and then waiting till the next year. When you do that, what happens is the million people that have talked to that policymaker's office in between sort of get a lot more of the attention. So try to keep the conversation going. Keep them updated, the office updated on what you're doing, how the issue's evolving. Manufacture reasons to reach out and ask questions about if they've had a chance to review what you provided them. Also connecting the issues locally, you know, making sure that your members of Congress and senators understand the local and state impact of these issues, or maybe the opportunity costs of them not passing. Connecting with the office in DC where the policy staff is, and also the office back home where the liaisons to constituents are. Both really important and serve really important roles in a congressional office. I only say this because I'm a past staffer, and I am trying to push my own my own position in society, I guess. But I think staffers are as important as members of Congress. They certainly help make a lot of decisions. They are the ones on the ground that are really working these issues. And so if you're meeting with staffers instead of members of Congress, like I really, in a lot of ways, equate the two. And in some sense, because staffers are really the ones doing so much of the work prior to the member of Congress making a decision on what he or she will do. I think it's just so important to get in front of the staff. So if you're meeting with staff, great. If you're meeting with members of Congress, also great. But I just don't want to discount the role that staff are doing. And then lastly, before we move into questions, I just say the work that you're doing is really vital. And I hear a lot of people that feel like they get lost. I'm sorry, that they get lost in the advocacy space, that they're not quite sure if people are actually responding to what they're advocating about. And I can understand why. You know, this year alone in the House and Senate, there were almost 11,000 bills introduced this Congress. And, you know, there's been about 1,100 votes. And most of those votes were procedural. So a very few number of votes on actual bills and amendments. And so I can understand why some people would think that. But the reality is constituents really matter to policymakers. And policymakers can't be experts on every issue. And on some of the issues that you're working on your great agenda, there's a pretty narrow set of experts. And so one of the roles that you have is really educating your policymakers on why these issues matter and what the impact of these issues are to constituents back home. And that's just really important. And so the work that you're doing, I can't overstate how important it is and how impressive it is. So with that, I will turn it back over for questions.
Thank you so much, Charles, for your analysis of the remainder of the 117th Congress, as well as the landscape here in 2022. I have very few questions left from following your presentation, but I know that plenty of our members will. So folks, if you have questions, please email Janet Dickelman at questions@acb.org. And you can also call or text Janet at 651-428-5059. And while we're letting those questions come in, Swatha, do you have any questions for Charles?
And when Swatha's done, I do have one already.
All right, that works. So Charles, you mentioned the Supreme Court nomination process. And we've heard a lot about this nominee, Ketanji Brown Jackson, being historic, and President Biden was very focused on nominating a woman of color to the bench. And she has had work on disability issues in the past, especially with regard to Uber and wheelchair access. So I just want to get your thoughts on how her nomination and her confirmation, and once she's confirmed, how it's going to affect kind of our work as advocates and Congress in general, how it's going to affect midterms or landscape.
Great question, Swatha, and thank you very much for asking it. It certainly is an historic nomination the president has made, and I think it's going to be a successful nomination. I think she will certainly, I believe, will get through the confirmation process and in the Senate, and will ultimately be confirmed to the Supreme Court. It takes a little while, and that process is, as we've all experienced in the past, is pretty robust and takes some time. And we will be hearing much more from her and her advocates and the senators between now and then. But certainly the response among senators already has been pretty positive, especially on the Democratic side, which are the ones that have the ability to push over the finish line. So that's sort of how I think the confirmation will go. Of course, you know, I'm sort of an observer here like everybody else, but it seems like this is moving in that direction. In terms of what the impact will be on both the election and your issues, you know, I would almost take a step back from the second part of your question on your issues. I always had a belief that I'd go to law school, and I took the LSAT, and after seeing my score, it ended my dreams of going to law school. But so it's tough for me to be a real you know, good predictor of how the Supreme Court will adjust given her presence on the bench. And that's something that I think, especially as we move forward, we're gonna know a lot more about. But I really don't have a lot of insight there, candidly. So I'm gonna pass on that question. The one that I will talk about is, you know, will this have an impact on the election? And the reality is, Supreme Court picks do have an impact. People, it's really not the only, but probably the biggest nomination that a president can make, that, you know, a lot of people sort of, you know, locally in communities really pay attention to and understand, because they view Supreme Court nominees as really sort of tipping the scales on some issues. And I think that this sort of works both ways. You know, it energizes Democrats to have a new Supreme Court pick, just like it has Republicans in the past when they did. And depending on the vote, obviously Republicans sometimes campaign against that. So hard to tell what the end result will be, but certainly Supreme Court is always, and this will be no exception, be a focus of the 2022 election.
And Charles, one more question related to this topic before Janet offers the audience question. I guess to build off of Swatha's question, is there a level of, you know, political capital that'll be used by the administration or by Democrats to confirm this candidate? And does that impact the domestic policy agenda that may move some of our issues forward?
Yeah, so, you know, traditionally I would say yes, but this has been a little bit of a different process. Not just with this this nominee, but just with everything that's been in Congress. Getting the infrastructure bill over the finish line took a significant amount of political capital. Getting the omnibus package, all 12 appropriations bills funded, took a lot of political capital. I think, coming together around Ukraine to some degree took some political capital. So will this obviously require the president to work it? Absolutely. And the White House is certainly doing that. Is this one that maybe comes with as much controversy as some others have in the past? I don't think so. But again, I'm monitoring it in the same way everybody else is through the news. But I don't think that this is something that will use up all the political capital that exists in the White House. I think the White House is going to spend a lot of that political capital trying to get the COVID package passed, trying to get the China competition bill passed, and potentially a number of other things before the year is over. I think that sort of traditional metric of political capital can only be used a number of times. I think that that's not necessarily accurate anymore, just because of the very bizarre ebbs and flows of policy that we've seen happening over the last several years.
Thank you.
Janet, what's the question got?
All right. Well, apparently a lot of people are interested in the elections because I have a question from Peter in Wisconsin asking how you feel the findings on the January 6, 2021 commission will or could impact the elections.
That's a great question. And, it goes without saying, as someone who used to work in the Capitol, I've paid a good amount of attention to some of the proceedings there. That is something that is a little hard to determine. I think there's a lot of people focused on the January 6th commission or committee, but I also think that both parties to some degree have been really focused on a lot of other issues, and so will there be certainly findings that will be of interest to voters? I think so. I believe there will be. Will those findings, impact the average election back home? I'm just not sure. That's a tough one to evaluate, especially in a time when there is so much sort of crowded noise in the policy space. But certainly there will be a lot to report there. Certainly there'll be a lot of coverage of it. How it impacts the individual election, I think, is yet to be determined.
And I just got another election-related question from Charles, and he wants to know how you feel the elections are going to be impacted by the constant conversation about the 2020 elections being stolen.
That is a narrative that in some places continues to be present, and it certainly has activated a group of voters significantly that are very focused on that. I think generally speaking, and I can't speak for the Republican Party, but I think a good portion of the Republican Party has moved on from that and is really focused on trying to put together sort of what the agenda is going forward, and not as much sort of what happened in the last election. So I think with a segment of voters, certainly there will continue to be a focus on some of those issues from 2020. But I generally think that people are looking to other issues to run on.
Thank you. And I have one other question, although I'm not really sure Charles can answer this, but maybe it's more a Clark and Swatha question. But gentleman from Berkeley called me and wanted to know what we can do to help our blind friends, compatriots in the Ukraine and Romania and Poland.
That is an interesting question, and one
Yes.
that I think that our immediate past president, Kim Charlson, and the World Blind Union are probably well situated to assist us with. So I'll be happy to forward that along, Janet.
I will do so. And that is all the questions I have for the moment.
And I'm sure more will be coming in.
Will be
Charles,
popping in.
a couple times you've mentioned now the Infrastructure Investments and Jobs Act that was passed last year. That's certainly something that our transportation, as well as pedestrian and environmental access committees and members focused on transportation and environmental access issues are paying close attention to, especially with the omnibus now passed and the funding that will flow to the state and local governments. I'm curious, so at the national and the federal level, do you see that impacting the ability to move additional transportation related priorities forward, whether that's something like a national framework for autonomous vehicles or changes to the paratransit system, such as our legislative imperative, the Disability Access to Transportation Act from last year?
I do. I think, knock on wood, transportation remains one of those issues that really does bring supporters from both sides of the aisle that really want to work together. And obviously, it's something that impacts every district in Congress. And it's one that, while at times has become slightly partisan, generally speaking, it has a lot of constructive policymakers that come together to really think through meaningful funding and policy options to make transportation not only better, stronger, but more accessible for people. So I do think there's a little momentum behind transportation policy, and that does always present more opportunity to take that momentum and shift it towards adjacent issues. And so I do think that there is some opportunity to do that. Obviously, the autonomous vehicle legislation or that policy debate has been ongoing and has been close at a number of points, but continues to be sort of a hot topic of discussion among policymakers. I do think there are opportunities to pass these sort of more targeted bills. Whether that comes between now and the election, hard to tell, or whether that could be something that comes after the election when people in Congress are a little bit more willing to add a number of things to the agenda that maybe they hadn't during the year. A little bit unclear. But I do, on a lot of your imperatives, I look at the end of the year as an opportunity to start moving things. And that's for a couple reasons. One is on some of these, it's become increasingly tough to pass standalone bills in the House and Senate, and things are largely being packaged together. And, a lot of that opportunity to be added to one of those packages will probably come towards the end of the year and not prior to the election. But, if everything's about bipartisan support to be able to move now. So if there's enough bipartisan support and both sides come together, Clark, and I know you've been working on these issues with both sides of Congress, timing is less of an issue.
That's great. Thank you. Swatha, any additional questions for Charles?
Yeah. You talked earlier about how there are several thousand bills, or maybe less than that are introduced every year, and that a lot of those don't get passed, don't make it past like a committee or make it out of to a vote. Can you sort of talk about on the impact of the messaging bills? Because I know a lot of people think that, oh, it doesn't pass, it's kind of last the end of the world, I guess. So it's the impact of messaging bills and impact of raising awareness of certain issues through legislation.
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, when I was working on Capitol Hill, I always tried to develop strategies to move legislation based on, trying to produce some secret formula around how bills move. And interestingly enough, very unlike, maybe maybe most sectors out there, there really isn't a formula for how these bills move. There's a lot of what I would call inputs, a lot of sort of factors that go into these bills, and some of those drive action and some of those don't. And it's not really, it really depends on the bill. There's not some critical mass or threshold. In some cases, a ton of co-sponsors matter, but there's also cases where there are no co-sponsors and the bill gets signed into law. So it's hard to, I'm going to get to your question, but just a note on the process. It's hard to really define what's the perfect process to get a bill moving. And we do know, however, that there's a number of things that really matter. Right now, it's really important to have bipartisan support. It's also really, and if not, it's really important that there's not partisan opposition. We also know that it's really important that bills have a connection to districts and states, so that a member of Congress is not sort of championing an ethereal concept, but something that is real back home for their constituents. I think it's also really important that that bills are constructed in a way that do have some messaging value. And this is getting back to your question, Swatha. The Congress has changed over the last 20 years. And, maybe prior to that, there were a lot more people that were very policy focused. And now you're having a lot more people that are focused on policy, obviously, or they wouldn't have a job, but they're also very messaging focused. And the reason for that is because they know that they can advance issues, not just through the committee process and amendment process in the House and Senate floor, but they can advance issues by elevating them in the public through messaging. So I think the messaging bills are really important. It helps educate people. It helps bring attention to issues. There's a political aspect to it too, which you can't understate, which is, it forces people to vote on an issue and take a position. But messaging bills are used by both sides to elevate priorities, and that's really what they do. So it helps, I would say, move the debate, not necessarily move the bill. And Congress has a platform to do that. But when looking at bills more broadly, it's vital that there's a methodical strategy behind it that leverages organizations like ACB and folks throughout the country that are willing to advocate for it and really educate policymakers on what the bills do and why it's important. I said there's thousands of bills that are introduced. A fraction of those make it to committee, even smaller fraction make it to the Senate or House floor. And the one thing that the ones that get across the finish line probably all have in common is they have real champions that not just when you're there, but when nobody else is in the room, are really pushing to have these done. And that comes based on great relationships with advocates like all of you and great education from organizations like ACB.
Thank you, Clark.
Great. Janet, do we have any other questions?
We do not at the moment, no.
All right. Well, I think that is a great note to end on, and potentially even end a bit early here today on the final day of the ACB Leadership Conference, as well as the Legislative Seminar. So everyone, again, thank you so much for your time and participation over the past few days. Again, thank you to our sponsors, JP Morgan Chase at the presidential level, Vanda Pharmaceutical at the congressional level, and Vispero as a Beltway sponsor. And again, Perkins School for the Blind, thank you for your support, your special support in allowing our broadcast control center to be placed on your campus in Massachusetts. Charles, once again, thank you for your involvement on the ACB Advisory Board, as well as your time and expertise in talking with ACB. And we look forward to working with you as we go forward here and approach these midterms.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it.
And for everyone out there, one final call for everyone wanting to enter into the raffle for ACB's monthly monetary support program. Creating or becoming a new member of the monthly monetary support program or increasing your contributions, it makes everything we do here at ACB possible. It makes events like this possible, as well as supports the advocacy efforts that we're all undertaking here with our legislative imperatives. So to either create an account or increase your dollar amount for the monthly monetary support program, you can email askacbmms@gmail.com, or you can call 888-999-3190. And as we wrap up here, Swatha, and we say thank you to everyone one final last time, it's important that we close this out like we do all of the Advocacy Update podcasts, which folks can find via their favorite podcast player.
Keep advocating.
Stay tuned, everybody.
And
The
where everyone
Spanish
else.
language show will be coming up just as soon as we can get Gabe and Swatha come on over to the studio and get started. So hang tight.
Okay, hola, hoy tenemos una especial, una guest, special guest.
Fin de la conferencia.
Sí,
De los
Tony
viernes. Estoy aquí con Swatha. Gracias, Swatha, por su ayuda con la Legislative Seminar. Y me llamo Antonio Stevens con la ACB y estoy la directora de Development and Communications.
Comunicaciones.
Una comunicaciones. And aquí por una, esperando por mi Uber. Entonces yo quiero venir en esta reunión con su Gabe y dice gracias por las transacciones este fin de semana y esta semana y también por todos trabajando con la conference, porque la conference, ACB Leadership Conference, fue fantástico. So, muchas gracias a Sue y Gabe y todas las personas.
Sí, me alegré mucho que la conferencia está exitosa. Sí.
So, entonces, cuando esperando por Gabe, estoy aquí.
Sí, es
Gabe
mi
2.
companion.
Antonio.
Sí,
Su compañero.
sí, compañero.
Bueno. So.
Gabe está aquí, pienso que.
Gabe está aquí también. Hola, Gabe.
Pienso que Gabe está muted.
Esperando por el micrófono.
Ya estoy.
Bueno.
Hola, Gabe, ¿cómo estás?
Bien, Suaza, ¿y tú qué tal?
Bien, muy cansada, pero muy bien.
Y nos acompaña aquí Tony.
Sí, estoy aquí también. Dice gracias a usted y Suaza por todos trabajando esta semana y este fin de semana por la conferencia. Fue fantástico. Oyendo, en la noche, todas las noches, y me gusta su programa mucho. So, gracias.
Gracias a ti, Tony. Tony, ya que te tenemos aquí hoy día, cuéntanos un poquito. Tú viviste en México un tiempo, ¿cierto?
Sí. Hoy tuvimos una presentación de Allison Barkoff para de el administración de vivir en comunidad. No sé cómo es todo. Y entonces tenemos una panel con Kim Charlson y la Unión Mundial de Ciegos. Y como sobre COVID-19 y sociedad de la pandemia. Y Gabe, ¿qué piensas sobre los dos?
Bueno, el tema que Kim Charlson estuvo moderando es de mucho interés y desde que salieron, desde que fueron lanzadas estas pruebas de COVID en casa, ese ha sido un tema que se ha tocado mucho aquí en ACB, porque entendemos que el tema de la pandemia es un tema de emergencia mundial en el cual hay que actuar rápidamente, pero siempre, lastimosamente, accesibilidad siempre queda como un pasa a segundo plano. Entonces, es importante que ACB esté abogando para lograr que estos tests de COVID sean accesibles. Y si no, de buscar una forma en la cual podamos independientemente hacer uso de estas pruebas en casa.
Sí. Y entonces el panel sobre la pandemia. Tenemos una panel de legal advocacy, abogacía de ley, ¿sí?
Eso fue uno de mis favoritos, Suaza, porque no sé si tú sabes que yo originalmente en mi país, Honduras, yo era abogado. Bueno, soy abogado todavía, sí, pero no, aquí no puedo ejercer por la diferencia de legislación. El sistema estadounidense está basado en el sistema de common law de los británicos, y en Latinoamérica seguimos el código napoleónico, el código civil, código romano. Pero sí, me apasiona mucho ese tema, así que me encantó ese panel, me encantó esa exposición acerca de la perspectiva legal de lo que es la abogacía que ACB está haciendo, y sobre todo hoy que nos preparamos, estamos a la víspera de empezar nuestras visitas virtuales a nuestros representantes en el Congreso. Tener una visión clara por personas expertas de cómo cómo está el terreno legal de la abogacía en Washington, para que nosotros podamos estar preparados y saber cuál es nuestro rol como personas que estamos abogando por la comunidad.
Sí, y entonces tuvimos los breakouts o las reuniones concurrentes.
Sí.
Y escuchas uno de o los...
Sabes que pude escuchar dos, no pude escuchar la última con Jeff Tom, porque porque hoy fue un día también normal de trabajo para mí, tuve reuniones, pero sí estuve escuchando otra vez la de Get Up, Get Moving, que es nuestra campaña fuerte de, como hemos venido mencionando estos días, de levantarse y ponerse en movimiento, salud para la comunidad, y está me encanta que la campaña está llena de energía y llena de mucho entusiasmo. Y se está haciendo que la gente se, se ponga en movimiento, justo como la campaña lo dice, se levanta y se ponga en movimiento. Y también escuché el primer panel, si me recuerdas, Suaza, déjame
con
ver.
Clark y sobre la intersección de la
De la privacidad y seguridad, sí, buenísimo. Voy a hablar un poco de IRA para las personas hispanas que no conocen de IRA. Clark y Suaza estuvieron hablando con invitados de dos compañías que han sonado muchísimo en la comunidad de ACB y en la comunidad de personas ciegas en general, Suaza, porque IRA es un servicio que, si bien es cierto, es pagado. Me gustó mucho que están tratando de lograr que organismos grandes, compañías, instituciones gubernamentales contraten con IRA para poder subsidiar un poco el costo a nosotros, los usuarios. Y la diferencia entre IRA y otros servicios gratuitos, o pedirle ayuda a alguien casualmente, a una amistad, a un familiar, es la privacidad, que IRA tiene. Una de las consideraciones más grandes es la privacidad de nuestra información, porque ellos acceden, justo con lo que hablábamos al principio, Suaza, de las pruebas de COVID. Tienen acceso a nuestra información de salud, a veces a nuestra información personal. Entonces, ese es un tema que por contrato IRA está garantizando nuestra privacidad y la seguridad de nuestra información.
Sí. ¿Usas IRA, Kate?
Sí, sí uso IRA.
Sí, no uso IRA, pero yo quiero investigar qué IRA ofrece para personas con con baja visión o son ciegas.
Sí, bueno, para mencionar un poco y para los que no saben, IRA es un servicio que te conecta con un agente que también, aparte de la privacidad y la garantía de seguridad, también es un servicio que los agentes que están ayudando en el otro lado de la línea son personas que han tenido un entrenamiento. No es que lo hacen por intuición, sino que lo hacen por intuición, sí, pero con entrenamiento. Entonces son entrenados para saber cómo dar direcciones a una persona ciega o baja visión, cómo mantener la seguridad, por ejemplo, cuando estás afuera en una calle o estás caminando, o tienen...
El Starbucks o el aeropuerto, sí.
Sí, y tienen muchos sitios en los cuales ellos cobran por minuto, pero tienen muchos sitios, aeropuertos, farmacias, tiendas, en los cuales ellos llaman area free zones, que son áreas en las cuales no te cobran esos minutos. Y los puedes usar para hacer compras, para, no sé, ver el color de alguna camisa o alguna chaqueta, para leer información de algún documento que no sea accesible, incluso de tarjetas, y ellos guardan mucho la seguridad. Entonces, sí, es un servicio en el cual ellos también, aparte de la cámara, porque ellos se conectan contigo por medio de una cámara, también tienen un sistema de GPS, tienen mapas, entonces ellos están viendo tu locación, no solo por medio de la cámara, sino por medio de tu GPS, de tu GPS, y así te pueden dirigir mejor, por ejemplo, cuando estás navegando en un aeropuerto, en un centro comercial, en una calle.
Sí. Y el último panel o reunión es con Charles Cooper, una miembro de Advisory Board.
Sí, del consejo de la Junta Consejera, sí.
Sí, consejera, sí. Y Charles habló sobre el ambiente política y el midterm, elección de midterm.
Sí, que ya son este año.
Sí.
Sí. Sabes que hoy el tema hoy el día estuvo bastante cargado de mucho contenido legal y político. Y son dos temas que me apasionan mucho a mí, la política. Yo he estado involucrado en política varias veces en la historia de mi vida y bueno, la parte legal también me apasiona. También estuvo, aparte de esa parte de la política, también se habló durante el día de lo que es el acceso a poder votar de forma secreta e independiente. Y creo que también escuchamos un poco de Brian de Democracy Live, que yo tuve el orgullo de participar como un Education Outreach Consultant, básicamente un representante de Democracy Live aquí en el estado de la Florida hace unos cuantos años, y ellos han creado sistemas de votación tanto en persona como a distancia, que son seguros, que nos permiten a las personas que somos ciegas y baja visión votar, ejercer nuestro derecho de votar en las elecciones de este país en forma secreta e independiente, que es algo sumamente importante porque es un derecho constitucional.
Y,
Ujú.
tú, vale.
Oh, no, lo otro que te iba a decir que me encantó mucho escuchar también, como ahora que mencionas parte del consejo de la junta consejera, el advisory board, también me gustó mucho escuchar a Matt Handley,
Sí.
que es un abogado y es parte de la junta consejera de ACB, y habló mucho de la parte legal de lo que es la abogacía y el trabajo de abogar que ACB está haciendo y que vamos a hacer en esos próximos 3 días en nuestras visitas virtuales.
Sí, y es mi favorito también porque
Ujú.
cuando yo estuve en la universidad, yo quería ser una abogada
Ujú.
por los disability rights, derechos de discapacidades.
Sí, sí.
Sí, sí, y es no tomo este trabajo, pero
Ujú.
yo tiene yo estoy curiosa por los sobre cómo la field es.
Ujú,
No,
ujú.
okay.
Pero estás en buen camino, Suata, porque estás en un ambiente bastante de mucha abogacía para la comunidad de personas con discapacidad y, y estás haciendo un buen trabajo, y estás joven, so puedes considerar continuar tus estudios.
Sí, yo estoy muy emocionada
Sí.
y yo me divertí
Ujú.
mucho.
Yo
Um,
también, yo también me divertí mucho con esas presentaciones y me encantó también que hubo el componente hoy día, Suaza, de las formas como hay otras organizaciones que se apoyan del trabajo que ACB hace para abogar por nuestra comunidad, por ejemplo, las personas de Disability Rights Advocates, que son
Christina Brent Young. Ujú.
Ujú, que son personas que básicamente no quisiéramos llegar a ese punto, quisiéramos que en general el gobierno, tanto federal como los gobiernos estatales y las compañías privadas tomaran la accesibilidad como algo, una prioridad, pero
Ujú.
lastimosamente no es así. Entonces es bueno saber que hay estas instituciones que están listas y dispuestas y tienen la facilidad y el conocimiento legal para entablar un proceso en contra de los organismos que no cumplen con accesibilidad. Entonces, es bueno saber que hay un respaldo legal, que hay un recurso legal para que podamos acceder al famoso Department of Justice, el Departamento de Justicia o a las diferentes oficinas de Civil Rights, las diferentes oficinas de derechos civiles, por medio de estas organizaciones que colaboran con ACB para, eh, digámoslo así, obligar a las instituciones que no están cumpliendo con leyes de accesibilidad para obligarlas a que tomen medidas de remediar esas fallas en accesibilidad.
Sí, y es importante que recordar, Gabe, para los Hill Visits
Ujú,
que están ocurriendo mañana y jueves y el viernes
ujú.
de semana. Sí, tenemos los recursos legales y tenemos la poder.
Sí, el poder.
Sí, poder.
Ujú,
Sí, el poder. Tenemos el poder de cambiar la ley o abogar para nuestros imperativos y issues que
ujú,
nosotros nos importan.
ujú, ujú. Sí, claro.
Sí. Y Gabe, yo quiero decir gracias por todo tú haces en el seminar y la conferencia para ti.
Mm,
Este último día y yo y mi equipo sabemos el el cantidad de tú haces para este programa y este español que nos ofrecemos.
ujú.
Sí.
Bueno, eso como tú sabes, nosotros aquí en mi hogar, en mi familia, Anthony y yo, Amamos mucho ACB, we love ACB. Y una de las cosas que me apasiona mucho ha sido esto de tratar de incorporar este componente bilingüe y traer ACB, porque ACB ha significado tanto para nosotros y significa tanto para nosotros que yo estoy muy apasionado con compartirlo con las personas de habla hispana, porque sabemos en ACB que hay muchas personas de habla hispana que nos están escuchando, porque yo he recibido llamadas y mensajes de personas que nos han estado escuchando estos 4 días, Suata. Y yo sé que vamos a crecer en membresía, yo sé que vamos a crecer en diversidad, y yo sé que la comunidad hispanoparlante va a encontrar un hogar en ACB como nosotros lo hemos hecho. Así que yo estoy muy contento, muy emocionado. Todo el trabajo ha sido completamente gratificante, porque el hecho de saber que estamos dando los primeros pasos para tener contenido en español, servicios en español, e información en español en ACB es un gran paso que me llena el corazón de mucha, mucha alegría. Y gracias a ti, Suata, por haber estado. Yo sé que los días han sido largos para ti, pero sin embargo hemos estado aquí todos los días puntuales a las 6 de la tarde. Y yo creo que voy a extrañar estas llamadas.
Sí, no, yo también. Y es va a ser una llamada a ACB, va a tener mucho en este regard. Sí.
Sí, vamos a seguir creciendo. Para los que no saben, mientras nos despedimos, les comento que yo tengo el orgullo de liderar el subcomité hispano que forma parte del comité de aspectos multiculturales de ACB. Trabajo bajo la dirección y junto a una persona que es muy querida, muy estimada para mí y muy respetada, que es Cheryl Cummings. Y Dan Spoon, el presidente de ACB, nos ha apoyado muchísimo, y la junta directiva en general nos ha apoyado, y creo que todos estamos muy entusiasmados con ir creciendo en contenido y en alcance en español, y estamos muy emocionados con el objetivo de incorporar a más personas hispanoparlantes en ACB. Y todo el staff, todo el personal de ACB, Tony, Clark, tú, Suata, Nancy, Kelly, todos han colaborado muchísimo con todo ese esfuerzo, y vamos a seguir adelante. Y como siempre, los dejamos con la forma en que nos pueden contactar. Nuestro correo electrónico es bienvenidos
acb.org. Sí.
Yeah.
Y sí, adiós, Gabe, y nos vemos en el futuro.
Nos vemos pronto, Suata. Y para cerrar con tu lema en español.
Y siguen navegando.
Sigamos abogando. Gracias, Suata. Ha sido un
Gracias,
honor
Gabe.
compartir este espacio contigo.
Sí, también. Rick, we're done.
Yep.